the federal government cut your funding for research. Rebel Media came in and did a crowdfunding project for you, raised about $200,000. After Charlottesville and the riots, the protests there, many people cut ties with Rebel Media, including the Conservative leader Andrew Scheer, saying that it could be seen as giving hate groups a platform. You still go on there, so I'm wondering, why do you go on Rebel Media after Charlottesville? But I do wonder if you've noticed that Rebel Media, for example, does seem to be fond of you. It's been accused, of course, of being supportive of white supremacist views. Ezra Levant, they have 1 million subscribers on YouTube, 150,000 followers on Facebook. Do you want his support? Do you want his audience?
I never understood why conservatives would go on that show. Anyways, as you can see, Wendy Mesley made a living not only being a conspiracy theorist of the hard left, but also by calling anyone she didn't like racist. I won't get into all the examples, but it was a major theme of hers. But how does that work when you, Wendy, are a woman of privilege who owes her position to her first husband, who would have been retired a long time ago? And so to say it, how long do you really think you're going to get away with it to be a woke anti-racism activist when you are a basic white liberal woman? I mean, how long do you think it's going to work for you before you wind up on your own sword? I mean, you're calling everyone racist just because. When do you think you're going to be vulnerable to that charge yourself? Except for in her case, it wouldn't be a false charge. Incredibly, in staff meetings, Wendy Mesley would use the N-word, the derogatory swear word against black people, repeatedly. Despite people expressing their comfort with it, despite black people being in the room, she would use the N-word. Who does that? Who talks that way? In private or in staff meetings? What on earth? Well, listen, Jian Ghomeshi used the CBC as a giant conveyor belt for young, naive, desperate women who would do anything to move up a rung on the ladder of showbiz. He was a predator on them. He used the CBC as a giant dating service, preying on audience members and interns. I guess what I'm saying is the CBC condoned that sort of thing, defended that sort of thing for Jian Ghomeshi. Why wouldn't they do it for Peter Mansbridge's ex? Just to be clear, Wendy Mesley was not fired for saying the N-word. She said the N-word repeatedly, and everyone in the CBC knew it. She wasn't fired for it. She was only suspended when it became public news. Then she was suspended for it. In the meantime, it was just like Jian Ghomeshi. They ran cover for her. They made excuses for her, probably tried to discredit any black person or other ally who said, yeah, maybe tone it down with the KKK talk, Wendy. And to think she dared to call Jordan Peterson or Maxime Bernier intolerant. But here's what Sheila Gunn-Reid found in those emails. The CBC refused to publish in the news stories the N-word that Wendy Mesley kept saying in meetings. They refused to let the world know what she shamefully did. They just never said what the word was. They just refused to. They thought they could pretend it was something else, that they could cover it up. But when people in the comments section on the CBC website wrote it, when they did the reporting that CBC was trying to stifle, those comments were immediately deleted. The CBC said it broke the rules by being demonstrably false or language that is potentially harmful. Seriously, Wendy Mesley drops the N-word again and again. The CBC keeps it a secret or tries to, but anyone who mentions it, who does the reporting in the comment section, they're banned. They're banned for being racist. Even if they're reporting it as a fact, which they did, the fact that Wendy Mesley said it, let that sink in. They weren't reporting the news. They were hiding the news because it embarrassed them and Peter Mansbridge's ex. The second thing to know is that besides deleting comments from the public that told the truth, the CBC simply were not going to report the story to vast swaths of their audience. If I'm reading this email right, there wasn't a single story in Radio Canada, that's RC, that's what French language CBC is called, Radio Canada. There wasn't a single story permitted in French about the N-word incidents. Not one, and nothing on socials. That's what social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. The CBC simply were pretending that the biggest racism scandal in recent memory in national journalism just didn't happen. They were just going to close their eyes and cover their ears and pretend it didn't happen to protect their own. To their chief accuser, their chief slanderer, who called everyone else racist, they were protecting her. And they're just getting started. Look at this. Just last night, here's CBC's chief censor, Brodie Fenlon. This is a news story. This isn't from Access to Information. This is in the CBC itself. Why CBC is turning off Facebook comments on news posts for a month. Social media attacks on our journalists and the subjects of our stories is something we take seriously. For sure, just like Wendy Mesley, she's allowed to attack you. She's allowed to smear you, call you a racist. You just can't talk back. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.